We got new information dropping left and dropping right in this case right now. It was announced earlier today that Jordan Willis checked himself into rehab. And as I was just sitting here wondering if this was something genuine, does Jordan really have an addiction problem that he's battling with? Or is this just something that Jordan is doing to make himself look less guilty? Is this some type of avenue that Jordan is taking to wiggle and weasel his way out of this situation? But as I was sitting here thinking about that, all of a sudden a new interview popped up. An interview with the cousin of one of the men who died. And he claims that Jordan is a chemist that's been in the kitchen water whipping, making all types of, let's just say, stuff since high school. He says that people would go to Jordan to get what they wanted, to feel how they wanted to feel, if you will. I don't want to go into specifics, and I don't even know if we could really talk about the specifics here. Also, all of this is alleged. We don't know if this is true or not. But from what the cousin says, Jordan's been whipping up stuff. The cousin says that he's angry, that his friends and his cousin were used as guinea pigs, and that the fifth friend has nothing to do with this, that this is on Jordan, that Jordan effed up. So after hearing the news that Jordan's in rehab, and then this bombshell got dropped on me, it was hard for me to even process this information because new information came out that finally police have sat down and talked with some of the family members of the three men who died. Now, I told you all yesterday that a new police department has taken over in the they've taken over in the investigation, but this is good news because finally the police are talking with the family, and from what I'm hearing, the family is happy with what they talked about. We don't know the exact specifics of the conversation yet. I'm sure we will learn more in the near future. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, maybe we'll know even more. But, I was questioning this whole time, and the family was, why? Why weren't police talking? And I don't understand what took them so long. Because you have to remember, they said that there was no foul play involved. They said that this was 100% not a homicide investigation. So I understand law enforcement can't tell us everything. We don't need to know anything. But I understand that, law enforcement can't necessarily tell everything to the family. But if you rule out foul play, maybe you can give some details to the family as to why you ruled out foul play. If there's 100% no homicide investigation, then why do you have to be so tight-lipped with this information? It's not like we're dealing with a situation where you may make an arrest in the future. We're not dealing with one of those type of cases, from what you say. So therefore, you should be able to reveal at least a little bit of information to family members to make them feel more comfortable about how everything is going thus far. But with that being said, I want to roll this news clip really quickly. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. I'm going to roll this clip, and then I'll be right back with more.
We have new information that may indicate we have less of a mystery in this case of the three dead men in Kansas City. Jordan Willis, the man who lived in that home, whose story has kind of been, let's say, inconsistent. He has now checked himself into rehab. So that fuels an assumption, even without the toxicology, that drugs played some role in what happened here. There's another survivor who was also there that night who has a past that is also instructive of drugs being part of this behavior. And that doesn't make the loss any less painful. It doesn't make the loss any less tragic that these young men with families are here no more, no matter what their choices were. Also today, after weeks of silence, the police finally met with the families of the deceased. What did they tell them? Let's bring in Fox 4 KC reporter Malik Johnson. He's been covering the case in Kansas City. Also joined by former FBI agent, News Nation Law and Justice contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer. Malik, thank you for coming back. What do you know?
Of course, of course. So we know that these families met with the prosecuting attorney who will be in charge of bringing charges if this case rises to that point today. We know all three families were represented in this meeting. Clayton McGeeney's family, Ricky Johnson's family, and David Harrington's family. We spoke with the attorney representing the Johnson's family after they left this meeting, and they left satisfied, they said. They said finally they feel heard, that after weeks of not being able to get in contact with police, not being able to get in contact with the prosecuting attorney, they finally felt heard. And most importantly, they said that they feel as though that this is being taken seriously. I know that they had been on your show and the families had explained to us how over the last few weeks they felt as though this wasn't being taken seriously, as though this was just being looked at and looked over in a sense. But now they say, after today's meeting, that they understand why police and prosecutors have moved the way that they have. And quite frankly, they were hopeful. They were optimistic walking out of that courthouse in Platte County today, Chris.
Malik, you've been filling in the facts and details of what we know and what we don't know. The time of death is going to be instructive. Jennifer and I will talk about this. But what have you learned?
Yeah, so this is some new reporting that we actually just got to today, working with our sources to get it all confirmed. But as you say, it is so important because it goes to that timeline. When did this happen? How did this happen? And now we're learning that these three men, at least one of them, presumably all three of them, were up as early as about 2 a.m. Monday morning. So we know that this fifth person left just after midnight, and now we know that these three men were still up at about 2 a.m. Monday morning. So what happened between that 2 a.m. period and that 10 p.m. on Tuesday night period is going to be instructive in figuring out exactly what happened. But we do know now, and I think it's a huge thing, Chris, because the timeline is the most important thing, considering these three men were in the backyard for as long as they were. So how long were they actually there? And every day, we're making inroads on creating a more defined timeline as to when this happened and when they were last heard from before, of course, they went silent.
Jennifer, the idea of the witness, the man who lives in the house, first of all, being allowed to stay in the house. We don't know what they did in terms of looking at his lab equipment. Supposedly he's a chemist, a scientist who works in his house. You know, they didn't make it a crime scene. What does it mean that he is now checked into rehab?
Well, I find that interesting. I mean, certainly, as you point out, now it gives us another indicator that, of course, drugs probably led to these tragic deaths. But I find the timing a little bit interesting in terms of, is this some sort of excuse possibly that will be used to say, listen, I was out of it, even if I was home, even if I was on social media using my phones, even if I did exit it, I didn't see them because I've got a problem and I was messed up that night.
The time of death is going to be one of the most crucial pieces of information when it comes to this case, because we need to know if the time of death lines up with the different timelines that law enforcement has been provided. We may not know all of the details when it comes to this case, but I guarantee you that Jordan and Jordan's lawyer have told more to law enforcement than they have, to the media. So I'm assuming that law enforcement and investigators hopefully have some sort of timeline laid out. We know the fifth friend says that he left at 12 and they were all still alive. And now we know, presumably, they were all still alive at 2 a.m. that night. So how does this timeline match up with Jordan's timeline? And I'm not talking about the various timelines that may have been provided on the news. I'm talking about the timeline that was provided to law enforcement and investigators. Because the lawyer could be on the news saying different things every night. That doesn't mean that they've provided all of these different stories to law enforcement. So whatever that official timeline is, whatever timeline that Jordan and his lawyer, settle with. I know that we've heard multiple different excuses already. I don't know what they told police, but I'm sure that the police tried to get some time down pat, of like, when's the last time you think you saw these people? When's the last time you looked at the clock before you went to sleep? So on and so forth. But for now, I want to know your thoughts about this case, because there's been so many developments over the last few hours or the last couple of days that it's been hard to keep up with. So let me know your opinions about this and about everything else that's going on down in the comments below. If you're feeling generous, you can donate to the channel via Cash App. I'll have my Cash App in the pinned comment. You can also help this channel for free by liking the video, subscribing, ringing the notification bell, and all of that good stuff. But with that being said, I'll talk to you all soon in the next one.